better world. A world of infinite possibilities across businesses, cities and countries. And so together, we're building a new network for a new era. A network of networks, powerful and protective, to connect people and things to the internet everywhere. A network that will unleash new opportunities and connect millions of people, sensors and machines to help our customers and the world achieve more. Always available, providing crucial insights and automating. A network that's a force for good, with the power to solve the most complex problems of our times. We will build this together, inspired by one another, our world and our future. And tomorrow. That's why you're here. To unleash your true potential. To imagine what you will make possible. Welcome to Connexin Live.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the founder and CEO of Connexin, Furkan Alamgir.
Wow, what an opening. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Connexin Live. I want to start by thanking all of you who made it today, and those of you who are joining us through the live stream. I know we have people who've traveled in from all over the world to be with us. We have Silicon Valley, we have New York, we have India, the Netherlands, Germany, Hong Kong, to name a few. Thank you all for making the journey to Hull and joining us in this amazing new venue. It's a huge pleasure to be hosting this, our first live event here in Hull. Hull is a city that has a special place in my heart. It's the city where I grew up. It's the city where I went to school. It's the city where my daughter Liana was delivered. She's going to be 2 in a few weeks' time, so happy birthday in advance. By an amazing team of midwives just down the road at Hull Royal. It's a city where we founded Connexin and built it to where it is today. I can stand here proudly and say to you that Connexin is made in Hull. Today's not just a big day for us at Connexin, it's a big day for all of us in the north. Events like this normally take place in cities like London, Paris, New York. But today we're all doing our part to change that. We have with us today city leaders, influencers, policymakers, entrepreneurs, global technology titans, people who have defined what the technology looks like in our lives now and what it will look like for us in the future. Thank you all for joining us and making this such a special occasion for us. I believe we are beginning of a new era in technology. And this era requires us all to think very differently about the things around us. But before we talk about the future, I want to reflect on the past and look at the part technology has played in our lives, in changing it and driving it to where we are today. So with that, I have a question for you guys. Now this is one of my favorite sounds, but I want to know if you guys know the answer to this question. What is the sweetest sound in tech? Anyone? Rob, you should know this. You're old enough. Who remembers that? It still brings a smile to my face, hearing it. Back then, did you ever think, well actually let's go back a bit more. Back then, do you remember we used to have to dial the internet and nobody else could use the phone? And if somebody did, it would drop you. I used to do that all the time to my brothers, like, use the internet. Used to drive them crazy. Looking at where we came from and where we are today, could you have ever imagined that today you guys would be sat here talking about smart cities and have phones in your pockets that can stream video, music, play games, download apps? All of what we have today started with a vision. A vision to put a computer in every home and one on every desk. This marked the start of our journey with tech and the computer age. As computers became more abundant, we started connecting them together, sharing information with one another, creating what I call the Internet of People. An internet where content is created for people by people. Contents like websites, games, applications. This sharing of information between us gave birth to the companies that we all know today. The Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons. I have a crazy fact that I wanted to share today, which kind of puts this in perspective. Did you know on WhatsApp, there are 55 billion messages sent each day? What do we talk about? The Internet of People has been one of the most transformative technologies of our time. It's changed the way we all live, work, and play. But now, we are in a new era, and there is a new internet emerging, and it's poised to change the world again. This new internet, the Internet of Things, is not just about connecting and sharing information between people anymore. It's about connecting and sharing information between people and things. With cheaper chipsets, better batteries, new ways to connect, things around us, such as our TVs, thermostats, watches, cars, are all becoming more connected and smarter. Today, there are 18 billion things connected to the internet. By 2020, that number is expected to rise to 50 billion. Just think about that for a second. Today, 18 billion. That's 3 times the number of people on this planet. And in under 2 years, 50 billion. That's just staggering. The Internet of Things is well and truly here. But it's not just about devices connected to the internet. It's about what that connectivity enables. Each one of these devices generates data. Data that we can use to better understand the things around us. Data that we can use to write new applications, develop new services, new innovations. Innovations that will change how we live, work, play again. How we look and see the world around us. Around the world, there are cities that are starting to harvest value from this new Internet of Things and the data that it generates. There are cities who've started writing apps for transport that tell you what time the next bus is coming. There's cities that use software to better manage streetlights. Whilst these are steps in the right direction, these cities just have apps. At Connexin, what we do goes far beyond this. Working with cities like Newcastle and Hull, who you'll hear from today, we're building the smarter, programmable cities of the future. And just think about that for a moment. We're connecting all the things around us to a city operating system, or City OS. Using a state-of-the-art network designed specifically for this new Internet of Things. Going back to that smartphone in your pocket, it's made of lots of different components and parts, like the screen, the camera, the flash, the GPS. They all do different things and work well independently. But when they all start working together, they enable some amazing things. Touching the screen can take a picture. Similarly, at Connexin, we enable all devices in the city to speak to one another, and that enables amazing things. As an example, an air quality sensor, which monitors the level of pollution in the air, can speak to streetlights and dim them in areas where the air quality is poor, telling us not to walk in such areas. That's just one example. Imagine what kind of technologies will be created on the back of this. But CityOS does more than this. It lets us speak to the city and the city speak to us. Now, sensibly, you'll be thinking, well, what does that mean? Well, the developers in the room will understand these as APIs, but for the rest of us, it means we're able to write new applications that can speak to devices within a city. Going back to the air quality example, it means maybe people in this room can write applications that can in real time monitor air quality and communicate that information with us. Imagine communicating that information with people who suffer with breathing difficulties, people with asthma or COPD, reminding them, take your inhaler today. That could prevent asthma attacks, reduce hospital admissions, and possibly save lives. Just like the vision back then, to put a computer in every home and on every desk, we have a vision at Connexin. We have a vision to make all cities smarter and programmable. To make cities better places to work. To make cities better places to live, to play, better places to bring up our families. Ultimately, we want to end up in a position where we can have cities where we can live, work and play in a completely different way. Thank you very much. I'm not going to do the Theresa May dance. We have an amazing lineup today. We have some great guest speakers. Shortly I'll be handing over to Ian and Andy from Hull, who will be talking to you about their vision for Hull and the art of the possible with smart technologies. We have John from the University of Hull, who will be sharing with us what smart means for his campus. We have Jenny and Tom, who kindly joined us from Newcastle, to share with us their vision for Newcastle and talk to us about the smartest street in the UK. We have Will, our CTO, who will be doing a real live demonstration for you of what we have done in Newcastle and the data that drives. And then we have my good friend Arvind from Cisco, who will be giving us a global perspective and talking to us about what the smart city ecosystem is like around the world. And to finish, we have an amazing panel of experts ranging from health to property and insurance, cities, to talk about some of the challenges and some of their views on some of the things we'll talk about today. We'll be taking live questions at the end, so if you do have any questions, please do start thinking about them. And with that, I think I will get off stage. I'm just going to play a short video to show you what we've been doing in Hull, and I'll invite on stage Ian Anderson from Hull City Council. Thank you.
smart city is a city driven by decisions built on intelligence and insights from the people and things around it. Imagine the benefit to society if cars could talk to traffic lights or waste bins could speak to waste trucks. At Connexin, it's just what we do.
Technology's become part of our everyday life. We rely on it for most daily tasks, but now we're taking it one step further and introducing entire city centres. Hull is becoming a smart city.
You can reduce the cost of waste management in the city significantly. We have one of the most forward-thinking councils. I think with the City of Culture, you've seen the change in the city and city centre looks absolutely amazing. And investing in now in this kind of technology is just future-proofing us as a city and putting Hull down as one of the most smartest cities in Europe.
Welcome to another beautiful day in Hull, and a fantastic venue that is part of the council embedding Hull as a centre for culture in the UK. So, Hull as a smart city. Start with the challenge. Apologies, it doesn't seem to be clicking forward at the moment. Oh, here we go. Thank you. The challenge. So, the question is this: smart cities are coming. How will we react? Cities, looking at the challenge that we face, we have to ensure that we approach smart cities as one. That the public sector does not present as a divided interface with the opportunity that the industry provides to develop cities in a smart and different manner. So to achieve that, it seems key that we have a coordinated approach to how we procure the services that will establish the city as a smart city. We don't present as unclear on what our communal will is. And we avoid piecemeal development of silo-based solutions so that you don't have lots of different systems that can't interface with one another. Inevitably, there is the risk you buy vertical aligned products that do not talk to one another, and that's something that clearly one would wish to avoid in developing a future smart city. But in taking a smart city forward, we have to see the opportunity for our city, for Hull, to develop alongside those digital technologies and take the opportunity that is there to become a city that builds upon itself and becomes a creative, innovative city, providing a seedbed for new businesses to become established. But of course, there's a danger that people feel left out in that. It needs to be an inclusive approach that finds a way for everyone to benefit. So, our strengths. Well, fortuitously, Hull does have a significant amount of positive things about it. Geography, first of all. We have coterminous boundaries with our NHS CCG, our Clinical Commissioning Group. That's quite unusual in the country, where the commissioning body for the city and the local authority for the city are as one and can look together at what works for the city. And within the Sustainable Transformation Plan for Health as a whole, there's been a will to establish a board focused on Hull as a place-based board. And that has again been a strength, because what it has brought together is all the leaders across the public sector to look cohesively at what works for this city, with knowledge, very, very significant knowledge of what is the key thing in their respective areas that will take the city forward. And having a place-based board where we can work together is crucial. Of course, we cannot work in the public sector alone. That interface with the private sector is crucial. And there is a city leadership board where the public and private sectors interface. But beyond that, there's a smart city board looking at how we realise the opportunity. So that again brings a cohesion between the private and public sector. And there's been data centre investments initiated in the last year, providing the potential for businesses to get up and running quickly. How do you get small businesses established? Well, the city has a Centre for Digital Innovation on the Fruit Market. You may well have seen as you approach the city. And that provides a seedbed for such small businesses to grow. And we have a significant university in Hull that has invested in a supercomputer, providing the deep analysis power to support some of the calculations that will be required to get the best out of a smart city. But probably primarily, and I won't leave it to last, primarily, the thing that makes Hull different is connectivity. And, oops. Yes, connectivity. So Hull is the only city in the UK where broadband is rolled out as standard. 80% of the premises have ultra-fast broadband, fibre to the premises. By March 2019, 100% will apply. But beyond that, the unique circumstances of Hull have given rise to the alternative of wireless broadband in a way that doesn't exist elsewhere. And like Connexin are able to provide wireless broadband to 80% of properties as an alternate provision. There is a concession contract that was tendered by the council to make accessible public assets for the facilitation of wholesale cellular access and for Wi-Fi across the city, and that has likewise been a significant innovation that Connexin, having won it, will be able to take forward for us. And in terms of lower power networks, we have a number of access points to Things Network, and conscious that Connexin likewise are investing in that area. And the mobile industry has prioritised Hull also, and it started to invest fairly significantly in the city. So when we then turn to the strategy that seeks to bring all that together, it encompasses all those elements and seeks to respond to those elements. So we start with the digital connectivity that exists. Our first theme is the expansion of, encouraging the expansion of digital connectivity across the city by doing what councils can do to make that easier, because it is unusual for the private sector to have created that connectivity without public sector encouragement or funding. It has come. So what we now need to do is help the private sector to continue to build upon that. And steps we've taken along that journey are the easing of the regime through which we can enable leases to be facilitated. But data is at the heart of a smart city, and so how we deliver public services depends very much on how we use data and place digital at the heart of the needs of users. And so the second and the third themes take that forward. The third theme being opening up data, how we can make data, non-personal data, available to support new digital initiatives and businesses to develop. But to make all this hang together effectively, the relationship between the public sector and the private sector has to be made easier to take forward. So we need a facilitative procurement regime in which digital technology industries can flourish. So we have the intent to establish a platform, but then establish a dynamic purchasing system underneath that that enables the connectivity and the services for the city as a whole, for all public bodies in the city to be linked into that overarching platform. So finally, I think I've put a time on this without realising. The four final themes are establishing a digitally supportive environment for whole businesses to become digitally mature, an area where we have invested in supporting the creation of digital Centre for Digital Innovation and Fruit Market, and the creation of a makerspace at the Central Library and through business voucher schemes. So continuing that digitally supportive environment, focusing education and training on expanding the pool of digitally skilled and capable job candidates so that people wish to stay and work in Hull, seeing the opportunities that that provides. Promoting digital inclusion to avoid isolation and ensuring that the citizens across the piece are able to benefit from the opportunities I alluded to earlier. But overall, ensuring the delivery of these services is within the context which is both cyber resilient and secure. So with that, I'll hand over to Andy, and I'll leave him with the joy of the onset.
Wow, this is fantastic. As a schoolboy of age 6 and 7, well before man landed on the moon, by the way, if you can whippersnappers, I remember that we used to pretend talking to our wrist and making believe it was communicating through a watch, and we could have a TV on there as well. I imagined flying cars and robots that could cut the grass and do all sorts of stuff. And it's incredible that I'm standing here in front of you lot in organisations that are making all my schoolboy dreams come true. This is an absolute honour. But my best idea, I'm going to come back to this at the end, was when I was 8 years old. I imagined having a conveyor belt system from the houses in our street, under the road, to the street corner shop, where I could put my shopping list and my money in there, send it through, and my goods would come back. Now, tell me that some large American organisation hasn't taken my idea, reimagined it, and called it internet shopping. In fact, I think I was even going to call my conveyor belt system Amazon, but that's where we are. Anyway, so that boy's grown up, and I'm proud to head up a 700-person piece of Hull City Council called Street Scene. When we do things well, you don't know we're there, and this is where I can now cross my fingers. And those are some of the services that we do, that Street Scene is responsible for. You'll know some of the good ones: waste, cleansing, grounds maintenance, car parking fines. And I must also, for the eagle eye, in case you get this pack afterwards, on there it says shoplifting, and I need to tell you that Street Scene is not responsible for the city street shoplifting in the city. But we have a wonderful, fantastic team called Civic One, who man the 24/7 CCTV cameras, work with our partners in the enforcement agencies, and have and help with the retail trade as well in terms of shoplifting. But what I have is other things, like, I don't know whether you know that we're responsible for the harbour. We're also responsible for port marine safety. I have have responsibilities for lifting the bridges about 2,500 times in it every year. And what that means is, in terms of my services, I have loads and loads of assets, I have lots and lots of people movement, and I have lots and lots of vehicle movements. And I'm now going to make an admission to you that I'd rather not make on TV and video, is that I would put my gully cleansing service up against anybody in the UK. But if you ring me, it's chugging it down with rain, and you ring in and say, there's a gully filling up outside my house, I have no idea there and then whether it's actually blocked and needs one course of action, or it's just litter on the top and needs two other solutions that could take place. One is very expensive and ties things up that could be dealt with in an emergency. The other one is simply just pushing your foot across the top and removing the litter and the detritus. So those are the things that I want to do. So, and I've got lots of instances like that across Street C. So what I now need to do is to make sure that how do we correct all of that? Because another admission is, I can't even tell you at the moment that I'm coming out to mend your pothole. I can't tell you that I'm coming out to change that gully. I have no way of doing that. So we've been extremely busy. We've been putting in back office systems. I've got my IT, or not my IT, Ian's IT team here as well. We've been working fantastic to put in back office systems. We're about ready to go to test next week, I think, on the highways. This will link into the new CRM in the next couple of months. And your customer journey will be that you could click on the map. I want to report in a fly tip. I want to report in a litter bin that's damaged, etc. And that will come through our workflow and feed all the way back, and you'll be able to tell, we'll be able to let you know what we're doing to it and when we're coming and when we fixed it. But that's only given me the basics. So I'm sorry, IT team, you've got more work to come. Because what I need to do is put sensors in. Because with sensors, I can then be predictive. I can then know the exact state of all my assets. And until recently, the ability to use low-powered LoRaWAN has been outside of our reach. So, as Errol Brown from Hot Chocolate really meant to say, it started with a bin. We now, as you well publicised and you saw the video, at the end of this month we go in to put in our first smart litter bins in place. I am not concerned about the technology at all. It's about how I will work and my teams will work with that technology. We've got to roll that out across the city as soon as we can. So what else are we going to do? What other opportunities does this LoRaWAN network and other fantastic connectivity we have in the city bring to us? So, what we're already working on, and I'm reading off this list because it's fairly fresh. So we've got smart litter bins. We're working with the Assistant Chief Constable as we speak, putting the specification together for smart data capture cameras to replace our CCTV cameras. That will also link into traffic modelling to make sure that we can move around the city, etc. And I have got business cases going on as we speak around smart parking, smart security at our depots, gully centres. It says smart butts, it's water butts, smart water butts that we've got around here, air quality sensors we've talked about, real-time information going into the transport interchange. But I'm also working, and my team's working with our colleagues in housing, public health and social care. When I can see that all on a single platform for the whole city, with the ability to have an overview and drill down, right down to an individual street light or an individual pothole, is where I need to be, because I want to tell you this is what we're doing. So you don't even have to ring in to tell us there's a problem, because we already know about it and we're already on with it. That's where I want to be with that. That's great, but it's all going to cost a fortune. And we're in austere times. I've got 1.6 in the bank. But there are funding models, and Arvin, I think, is going to talk about funding as we go through. We've got some capital. We can talk to the government departments to try and get some bids in, to get some money in, but there are other funding models available as well. But I know for street scene, and I hope you do in your own organisations as well, is I can replace the cost of failure and the cost of appraisal, checking things, by preventive measures. So my business case is already stacking up, because all I'm doing is replacing my failure with preventive costs. I can carry on doing it wrong and getting it wrong, or I can replace it with that. So I'm running short of time. I'm just sticking the V's up at me. So I want to go back to the beginning. I'm going to use paraphrase a business leader, Tom Peters, who said, "I'd like to thank my hosts for inviting me. I'm delighted to be one of the speakers that's standing in front of you, but you invited the wrong person." Because the people that I tried to get on the stage were the 6 to 10-year-olds. So here's my plea to you wonderful tech companies. Get inside the heads of those youngsters. Get out there, handies on. Reimagine it, make it happen in whole, and tell the world. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome on stage now a good friend of mine, Chief Information Officer at Hull University, John Hemingway.
Good afternoon, everybody. This feels like a scene from The Matrix. Do I choose red or do I choose green? Before I start, I can see a number of faces that I know in the audience, and I was reminded of a time that I went to play cricket with a very dear friend of mine, and we went to RAF Benson in Oxford. And my cricketing career wasn't an illustrious one, but it was an enthusiastic one. And we both walked out together to bat. And there in the distance, somewhere near the boundary, was this very tall, athletic, well-muscled young man, who my friend realised very quickly was the bowler. So as this gentleman started his run-up, my good friend walked forward and he put his hand up and he stopped him in his tracks. And he walked down the wicket and he stood next to him and he looked at him and he said, "We're not going to hurt each other, are we?" And so that's my motto for this afternoon. We're not going to hurt each other, are we? So, in thinking about today's presentation, I was minded as technology leaders how we spent a lot of our time with systems and with data and with trying to help our organisations run more efficiently. Now, if you go back to about 1987 and you look at every business case that's been made for every systems implementation throughout history, and you add up all the savings that we've promised to make for our organisations, all of our organisations would currently be running at zero cost. Because we've saved all the money that they ever spend running themselves. So we've got to raise our game, I think, as technology leaders, and we've got to start to add something different. So when I think about smart, I think about that next part of the journey. Some of the things that you've heard already. And for me, smart is about systems that are making a remarkable transformation. So we're not talking about more transactional systems, we're not talking about more data, we're not talking about more business intelligence. We're actually talking about systems, integrated systems that start to change the lives of our citizens. So I'm looking at changing the way that our students and our staff and our other stakeholders interact with our institution. And in doing that, I'm looking at what I call the 5 eyes. So that's not 5 eyes staring at you out of the dark in some scary horror film. It's 5 things that begin with the letter I. Apologies, I went one too far. Oh, I've lost the slide. Oh dear. So, the 5 eyes for me are about being intuitive. So, making things easy to engage with to interact with, to use. About systems being integrated, so we actually have information flowing between these different smart systems. Things working in a seamless, in a consistent and an interoperable way. We want them to be informative, so we do actually want them to deliver value to the people that are using them. We want them to be innovative, so we want them to actually change the way that people work. So when I think about digital, I think about two dimensions. So if you think about digitization, that for me is taking something that you've already got and doing it digitally. So we have a library full of books. If we make those books available electronically, that's digitization. If we go beyond that, we go to digitalization. That's doing things differently. So anybody out there who uses taxis might have moved to Uber. Well, Uber came in and they completely changed the way that people book, use and pay for taxis. That's digitalization. And we want our systems to be impactful so that they do actually make a difference to the lives of the people that use them. You might say that's very high ambition. You might say that's quite laudable and difficult to deliver. But I do believe the generation of smart systems that we're now starting to work with will have that sort of impact. But we need to think on two levels. We need to think about macro smart and we need to think about micro smart. So at a micro smart level, we're starting to work with Connexin on two of our first smart applications. We're looking at smart parking, primarily because my favourite definition of a university is a loose collection of colleges united by a common grievance over car parking. If anybody ever has spent time in a university, the one thing that people will complain about is car parking. It is the one thing you cannot get right. So that's why we're tackling it. If we want to make a difference to the staff experience, let's sort out car parking. And we have a vision of using smart technology to make a difference in that area. The second area is about inclusivity, diversity and well-being. So we're looking at using smart with our badges that we all carry and giving people the opportunity to have an additional sensor added to that. So if they're visually impaired, if they're hearing impaired or disabled in some way, in an emergency situation, we can actually find them on our campus and we can target the help and assistance that they need to be evacuated safely from our campus. Now, if you take that a step further, you can add to that panic button functionality that allows anybody to register to have the additional sensor on their card. And if they feel vulnerable, if they feel in danger, or if they feel in some way threatened, they can hit the panic button, we can find them, and we can target the assistance they need. So that's micro smart. But all of that is great, and not terribly impactful or innovative if we don't link it all together. So how do we start to put the architecture together that actually does that for us? So key to that is the right sort of connectivity. And you've heard about some of that from Ian, so things like LoRaWAN, things like 4G, 5G, and good Wi-Fi provision that's ubiquitous around our campus. We do need to work with security and make sure that the systems and services we offer are secure. And very important to me is the whole issue of privacy. And something that I don't see much research going on with, and that is digital ethics. So how do we use information? How do we respect our citizens? There needs to be a good integration layer that brings the systems together, an information layer that delivers the insight that we want to provide to the people using our systems, and a common set of standards that holds this all together. So we need to think about that macro architecture. So our smart campus vision has a number of dimensions. We're looking at things like smart education, so how do we use it in learning and teaching? How do we use it in administration? How do we use it in security and safety? In terms of utilities and the management of energy and the environment, in terms of communications and also in terms of transportation. And if you bring all of those elements together, you start to create a smart campus. And finally, one last thought I'll leave you with is the potential to layer over smart and that smart agenda, the power of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. Evidenced there by the three wise monkeys. One in a virtual reality headset, one with some augmented reality glasses, and one with a Microsoft HoloLens, which is mixed reality. If you start to bring those elements into a vision of smart, and you start to use that for training, for maintenance, and for other aspects of that smart vision, you start to have a very powerful way that technology can make an impact to the future lives of our staff, our students, and our wider stakeholders. So thank you very much.
John, thank you very much for sharing your insights with what you guys are doing at the university. I know that the team have been working very hard with your team to put some of these really cool new technologies in place in Hull. So thank you very much. It's my absolute pleasure now to introduce you to two of the most innovative people I know in the north. They are responsible for the smartest street in the UK, and we've had an absolute blast working with them in Newcastle around the Great Exhibition and building this technology with them. So with that, I'd like to introduce on stage Tom Walton and Jenny Nelson from Newcastle City Council.
Yeah. Hello everyone. Furkan needs to get some new friends if we're the best he's got. So Jenny and I are going to say a little bit about the journey that we've been on in Newcastle. Before I do, I've got a few thanks. Stu from Cisco has been instrumental in this, along with Matt Smith. And Furkan and Alex have been absolutely fantastic. And I'll also mention a company called Stellium, who introduced us to all of this. So I'm going to give a 4-hour lecture about economics, and then Jenny's going to talk about smart cities. No, I'm not. I'll just give you a little bit of background about Newcastle, and then Jenny's going to tell a little bit about the digital journey we've been on, because I'm not clever enough. So in Newcastle, we have quite ambitious growth agenda in Newcastle. It's partly my job as the director of place, so I've got planning and housing, trying to get about 1,000 new homes per year built, 1,100 maybe. The urban core working on a number of big strategic projects. So a lot of capital investment, a lot of growth. But one of the things we're trying to do is to drive the economy. So Hull spoke quite a lot about the service delivery side of things. Obviously, as a council, we've got all of that as well, but we're going to talk a little bit more about the sort of economic implications of smart cities. So you can see Newcastle itself is about 280,000 people, but the wider urban area is, there's about 1.7 million people on the metro network, and that's increasing over time. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of talking about Newcastle, but we're just about to move into a mayoral combined authority. So like Manchester and Liverpool and West Midlands, we will have a directly elected mayor in May next year, and that mayor will cover all of Newcastle, all of North Tyneside and the whole of Northumberland. Now, Northumberland, if you don't know, is the most rural county in England. So we're going to have this quite interesting geography of working from a core city, not the biggest city in the north, but a pretty substantial urban centre, all the way to remote rural areas in Kielder Forest and up towards the Scottish border. So from a digital technology point of view, that has a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. So some of the things that Jenny and I are working on are in this North of Tyne context, getting ready for a directly elected mayor next May. So across that wider footprint, we've already got quite a good ecosystem of businesses. I'll pick out a few here that are worth mentioning. Red Hat are located next to the university expertise. Ubisoft are a games company that have got their UK base in Newcastle. Reflections is part of their operation as well. But you'll see Stellium are met there. Stellium have 3 very large data centres on the edge of in North Tyneside, and they now have a fibre ring from those data centres round into the city centre, and then they're now working on a fibre link to Denmark and elsewhere. Accenture, a very large company that got a lot of staff in North Tyneside, and they're working with the digital team in the Department of Work and Pensions and the tax office. So there's a lot of national expertise, particularly in the government departments, that are digitising and looking at digital technology, and that is beginning to attract an ecosystem of companies. I could mention others, Nomad Digital do Wi-Fi in trains around the world, and a number of other technology companies there. So part of our job is to, one, do the things that Hull was talking about street scenes and bins and everything, which we'll come on to, but part of it is how can we make this smart city drive the economy? So I'll just explain a property project, mainly because Furkan and everyone knows that I'm better at talking about property than I am about technology. So we've managed to do a couple of really big, quite innovative deals in Newcastle, and Helix, which is a site where the brewery used to be in Newcastle, is now, we've done a strategic partnership with Legal & General, and that is really driving the delivery of a substantial new quarter of the city, 24 acres. But we're trying to build that round the technical expertise of the university. So the next one is a bit geeky, but hopefully that goes on. So what you'll see there, it's a bit blurry, or it is to me, maybe it's my glasses. But on that site, we're going to have 3 national level areas of expertise from the university. One is the National Innovation Centre for Ageing, and the Health Trust and the university are experts in not just, it's not ageing like how to be ill, this is ageing how to be healthy. And they've got a huge expertise, and because of that, we've attracted the National Innovation Centre for Ageing Technology to be in Newcastle. The other expertise in building 1 there is around energy systems, and a Professor Phil Taylor, who's an expert in energy grid management and systems, looking at low carbon technologies. So again, we're trying to build an ecosystem around that. But the third one, importantly for this audience, is the National Innovation Centre for Data, which was announced in George Osborne's last budget and is now on site. And the computing department at Newcastle University are world class, and they have 50 PhD students currently on site working on data analysis. And as part of this package, there's a group of people called the Urban Observatory, which are in this building, and they currently are working on bringing data in from across the city, and have about 8,000 measurements per minute. I think that's right, Jenny, isn't it?
Just about.
Coming into their data centre. We've been working them across the city on air quality monitoring, where the buses are, where everything is, and they're harvesting the data into their systems. So we already had quite a good platform and quite a good analysis and quite a good ecosystem. And what we're trying to do now is move on to look at smart cities. And as a result of that, this is the building that the Innovation Centre for Ageing and Data will be in. It's on site now, but that's the schematic. So we'll have the 2 big innovation centres for the UK as a whole based in 1 building. So what we're trying to build is build around that the smart cities technology, and as a result of this, we started talking to Connexin, we started talking to Cisco and others about how we built a smart city. I think it's now you, Jenny. Can I get there? There we are.
I've got my own.
Oh, you've got your own clicker. She's got her own clicker.
Yes, so Tom set out the bigger picture for the city and how important digital is for the growth of our city and the broader North Tyne area. And I guess there's always been lots going on in Newcastle. We've just been a little bit guilty of not sharing our story, as well as perhaps some of our neighbours have. So one thing that we did, I thought you were going to be my glamorous assistant with the book, but what we decided to do earlier this year was to develop a digital narrative, which really sort of sets out some of the strengths that we feel that we have. And we will make this available for anybody who's interested. But just in summary, some of those strengths that we set out in the narrative. And it is a narrative for the city, not just for the council, of around connectivity, so you'll not be surprised that we're obviously different to Hull, but we still have very good overground, underground, under the sea connectivity. We have excellent free public Wi-Fi within the city centre and a number of public buildings as well. And we're really working hard to develop some quite radical 5G and local full fibre proposals as well, where we can maximise the use of public sector assets to further deployment. We also feel we've got quite a strong piece around skills, and our mantra is that we should be offering digital skills from playground to PhD, which is obviously quite broad. So whether that's about supporting code clubs in schools, whether it's about our newly opened University Technical College, which is for 14 to 19-year-olds, and has digital transformation as one of its specialisms, and is backed by some really big names like Ubisoft, Sage and Accenture. Or whether it's actually at the high end of the academic spectrum, where we're really sort of lucky to have institutions like Tom's outlined with Newcastle University and Northumbria University as well. Newcastle itself sort of topping the global league for research impact in computing science. So we feel like we have a really strong skills piece within the area as well. And as Tom mentioned as well, the tech sector networks within the city area are also really strong. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Tech Nation report, which actually said that Newcastle has the fastest growing tech and digital sector outside of London. So all of these really big strengths help underpin some of the work that we are trying to do within the council. And I guess what this picture shows is how some of that city jigsaw fits together to support the council to actually deliver a digital programme which meets our three objectives, which are to...
And how central Jenny is to it. You see in the middle of that.
It was a fantastic morning at work, actually, working on this picture. It's definitely a lot of us wishing that we could sketch like that. But essentially what we wanted to do is, because the digital programme so broad, try and show it in a way that captures people's imagination. But so the three objectives that we have for our programme are that we improve outcomes for residents, service users, businesses, the broad spectrum, that we reduce the costs of service delivery, and that, like Tom said, we drive economic growth by establishing Newcastle as a place to do business and a place for innovation. I've got the cursor of the clicker. There we are. Okay. So it might be a little bit controversial, although we've had hints of it already today, to say that in Newcastle, building a smart Newcastle is not just about deploying technology, it's about how that technology improves outcomes for people. So I'd like to introduce you to Margaret, who's 70. She's lived in Newcastle all of her life. And she was actually one of our users who worked closely with my team on our innovative chatbot that we developed for providing social care advice and guidance. And the point to make on this slide is that whether it's a chatbot, an app, a smart device in the home, a machine learning algorithm, the network, whatever it is, the emphasis on user need and defining problems, not just deploying solutions. So what's smart about our Newcastle is that it puts people first and it's inclusive. And once we've defined problems, then we're trying to maximise participation by engaging real people, like Margaret, in the design and development of digital solutions. But also, beyond Margaret, like Hull have mentioned, the university, the private sector, other institutions within the public sector, how can we take that sort of triple helix approach to make sure that we're actually delivering something that's of value? And we've seen firsthand that where there is a benefit for people, people are more than willing to engage with new technology. So Margaret gave us one of our favourite quotes in my team, where she described her phone as like her umbilical cord. So when we talk about the 6 to 10-year-olds, it's not just the 6 to 10-year-olds, it's the 70-year-olds as well. So, like I said, our Newcastle is about our broad users across the whole spectrum. And here's another face. So this is Neil, who is one of our waste collection operatives. also known up north as the Canny Bin Man, who is the face of our waste and recycling campaigns. And he knows firsthand about, similarly to Hull, how we're transforming and using smart technology to understand things like the bin bill levels and optimise our collection routes. So our Smart Newcastle targets activities which are valuable to us and within our city. So it's about more efficient and effective service delivery. We don't want pet projects. Pet projects are nice, but we don't want those. That's not what we're focused on. We want sustainable business cases. And it's something that when Andy was talking, we've thought a lot about. A lot of smart initiatives are sort of grant funded, but then what happens when the money runs out? So it needs to be something that's sustainable where there is that business case to carry on. And when we talk about the opportunity that smart presents, sometimes there's an element of actually, do we even have a choice but to embrace smart technology? Newcastle by 2020 will have lost £280 million from our budget. And despite potentially the end of austerity, we don't have a choice. We have to transform, we have to reduce costs, we have to make our services more efficient. But we do have a choice in how we actually do that. And our choice is to take a design-led approach which is underpinned by digital technology. Now, we're at a tech event, and you might be thinking, well, it's all very well talking about Margaret and Neil, but when's she actually going to talk about any technology? And you'd be right, because being able to deliver improved outcomes for people and more efficient and effective services, it depends on that reliable, smart tech infrastructure, communication platforms, and analytic tools. And I get to tell you about a really exciting project, although you're going to hear a lot more about it after this, that we worked on with Connexin and Cisco over the summer for the Great Exhibition of the North. A number of you might have attended the Great Exhibition of the North. If you didn't, it was a celebration of art, design and innovation, and it attracted over 3 million people to Newcastle over the summer. We're just going to share with you a little video now.
Innovation is in Newcastle's DNA. Newcastle was the first place in the world to have a street lit by electric lights. And I'm really excited that we'll have a smart street installed by Connexin and Cisco, which will transform the way that we see our world. We're only just starting to learn about the potential impact of new technologies. And it will do so much to explore how we can not only connect better to each other, but also to the city we love.
Our world is changing with innovations in health, in technology, and our improvement in standards of living. People and their demands for cities are ever changing. It's about giving us that insight into what the city is doing, how the city is living, how the city is feeling, so that we can make adjustments and improve things in real time.
Newcastle's a great city where digital businesses can really flourish. The investment in Collingwood Street that Cisco are making is testament to that. We want to be a smart city that has digital and data at its heart, a city that plans using that data.
The Newcastle Smart Street project is a really fantastic opportunity to demonstrate what's possible in an environment where you add some digital technology to a road in a normal city. So we're going to be looking at how you can make waste management smarter, parking smarter, improve and make lighting smarter. We're going to be measuring air quality. We're going to be looking at how vehicles affect road surfaces, and we're going to then use that to look at how those insights can be used together to give you intelligence about how a city's working and how you can maybe improve it for people that live and work and visit that place. Cisco are working with an ecosystem of partners in this project. Mayflower are providing the smart lighting solution, Connexin are bringing the whole thing together as the main delivery partner, and Quantella are providing some of the integration tools that are necessary, and also a very smart artificial intelligence engine called Atlantis. Cisco's role in the project is we're providing a platform called Cisco Connected for Cities, which combines all those different data sets together and then enables you to do clever things with that data. Does traffic and congestion increase air pollution? You can only do that when you're monitoring both congestion and air pollution together. And whereas there's lots of grey solutions for looking at those things separately, it's still pretty unusual to do it as a combined thing.
Quantella is bringing advanced analytical capabilities, predictive analytics for different domain-specific use cases. Like how exactly do you foresee the parking prediction, or how's the parking forecast going to look like? Similarly, we have a lot of information on environment. What is the potential prediction for the air quality? Do you see the CO2 levels go up depending on their past history, or do you see the CO2 levels go down?
For a number of years, we've been at the forefront of smart streetlights. Business case built on reduced maintenance costs and energy costs and control and licensing. So if I can collect data from sensors, whatever they may be, and provide it to an open data platform, I can encourage SMEs and other businesses to build a solution to benefit the system. There's a host of things that can come into it, but it's the ability to provide an infrastructure that collects the data from sensors that can be deployed and provides that data an open platform for people to exploit. And that's where we think the future innovation will come from. Third parties, building applications to work in a smart city life.
Looking at what we're doing in Newcastle, we're taking that first step. Like in everything, 5 years ago, people talked about smart cars, autonomous vehicles, people would have laughed at it. Today, we're talking about smart cities and smart streets. In Newcastle, this project will be that leader that will show and enable and inspire people to see what can be achieved if technology is mixed with people.
And like I said, you'll be hearing a lot more about that project following our presentation, but for me that project really demonstrated a number of key principles for our smart city. The importance of an ecosystem, so understanding data that's across different service areas, understanding the interplay between bin data, between lighting, within air quality. And again, much like Andy said, how do you kind of bring those together to actually achieve maximum intelligence and benefit to people in the city? And the importance of having open systems that can talk to each other, and thinking about, from our perspective, how do we procure that to make sure that we're smart from the start? So we don't want standalone, off-the-shelf, silo smart solutions. We need something that can talk to other devices, can talk to other systems. That's really important to us. And I think, again, from a slightly different perspective, one of the key points about this project was about making technology visible in a way that builds awareness, increases trust and reduces fear. I think if we can try and help people, like Margaret, understand the benefits of technology, then people are willing to take part in that. They want to be within that city and can see the benefit to them, rather than it being a sort of big brother, what on earth are the council collecting information about what is in the bin, that kind of fear factor that won't get us very far at all. I think, again, it demonstrates the importance of the council enabling deployment, and I'm just laughing at myself with the drone footage on that video was another example of where we basically just had to make it happen. So before the project started, I had no idea what a Section 50 notice was, what a mobile elevated working platform permit was either, and it's fair to say that we've learned a lot of lessons from the project in how the council needs to make it easier for companies to deploy within our city. And actually it also demonstrated that despite some of those barriers, through collaboration and hard work, we made it happen in a really short space of time. And I'd like to say, second Tom's thank you to Connexin and Cisco for their commitment to making that project a big success. So what next? Well, I hope we've set out today that in Newcastle, smart isn't just a technology buzzword, and what it means to us is about using technology in a way which improves outcomes in our city, and also helps us as a council become more efficient and effective, and supports that bigger, broader city agenda around growth. And while we've got lots going on within the council, we know that we can do, but we need help to do that, because Tom and I aren't technologists, fair to say, but we know that we don't know what's out there. So what we'll be looking to do towards the end of the year is go out to procure an external partner, a sort of tech and innovation partner who can help us learn the lesson from the smart city, from the smart street, consider the ecosystem and the landscape that we have within the city already and the existing strengths that we've got, and build on that to actually make us more efficient, more effective, and deliver a much smarter smarter city for everybody.
Oh, sorry, I went on as well. So just to wrap up, just re-emphasise really some of the things that Jenny said. We're seeing it as being very customer-focused, people-focused. How can we make it better for customers of the council or the city, visitors to the city? How can we drive the economy using smart city technology? And picking up on a point that Andy said, most of the business cases have to self-finance. We can't just go for the next grant. So those are the three big messages really. What we're trying to do is get the right partner to drive the business cases that can pay for themselves and pay for partners' capital investment if there is capital investment. How do we drive the economy and keeping it customer focused, people focused? It's not about the technology, it's about how you make things better for cities. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Great to hear about everything that's going on in Newcastle, and thank you for all the invites to all the fun events at the great exhibition of the North. Alex and I had a blast. So we've got a special treat for you today. I think it's all well and good talking about things. It's really important to see things in action. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our Chief Technology Officer, Will Keble, who'll be walking you through what we've done in Newcastle and showing you some of the live data from the Smart Street there. So with that, Will, I'll hand it across to you.
Thanks, Scott. Good evening. We've heard a lot this evening already about the benefits and features of the Connexin City OS, so I'm really pleased to actually be able to show you some of them right here, right now, live from Newcastle. Now, unfortunately, as some of you may have noticed from the programme, I'm a last-minute addition, so this will be something of a whistle-stop tour. Although, for those of you who don't want to hear me prattle on, that might come as good news. Hopefully not. Connexin have made Newcastle home to the smartest streets in the UK. This is the live Newcastle dashboard, and our deployment is focused on Neville Street, which we can actually zoom into Neville Street. We can actually have a look just outside Newcastle Central Station, the various different verticals that we've got deployed. All of the streetlights on Neville Street have been upgraded. They're standard LED streetlights, and we've upgraded them with the addition of a wireless base controller to become smart streetlights. Now, what this means is that from here we can change the colour or the intensity or even turn the lights on and off. Unfortunately, I'm sat next to Newcastle City Council on my table, so I don't think we'll be doing any of that this evening. However, I could, of course, if I wanted to. As you can see from the slide behind me, all of the street lights, the icons are currently green, and this indicates that the lights are currently turned on. During the day, the icons go red, and that indicates, of course, that the lights are turned off. We've also deployed strategic points air quality sensors, and if we click into these air quality sensors, we can actually see the temperature, humidity, and the PM2.5 values. So looking at that, it's 13.5 degrees, it's a little bit chilly. Newcastle is up in the north. The PM2.5, however, and for those of you like myself didn't know what that meant, that's the particulate matter, or in other words, a measure of the dust and soot in the air, that's fairly low. So if you're going to go out, I'd take a coat with you, but I wouldn't worry about breathing the air. We've also taken all of the litter bins, the public litter bins on Neville Street, and we've converted them from standard litter bins to smart litter bins with the addition of an ultrasonic fill level sensor in the hopper lid that measures the amount of rubbish in the hopper. Now, that sensor just bounces a wave off the rubbish and it comes back, and we can actually see the fill levels in real time on this dashboard. There we go, 80% for that particular bin there. So, looking at this, Andy might need to have a word with Newcastle City Council because they don't appear to be doing as good a job of emptying the bins as his team do. But the good news is that this system has already generated an alert that will have gone to the team in Newcastle to let them know that these bins are becoming full. And that means that hopefully, even as I'm speaking, there's somebody on their way to empty them. And if we have a look at it a little bit later on, the bin should be not 80% full. The last vertical I want to show you on the street is the smart car parking. We saw a video of it being installed earlier. The magnetic presence sensors have been embedded in the roadway, and by measuring the variation in the background magnetic field strength, they can detect the presence of a vehicle. And that means that we can actually see, again in real time, the occupancy, so we can see which spaces are occupied and which spaces are available. So there are a couple of spaces available if anybody would like to drive to Newcastle. Of course, that may change by the time you get there. Now, everything that I've demonstrated so far has been about live data, about reacting to situations, but one of the really powerful things that I want to show is the reporting, the visualizations that are actually possible using the data that we're collecting. Newcastle University have an urban observatory programme that have been rolling out air quality sensors across Newcastle and Gateshead. And it's a fantastic programme because they make the data openly accessible. So we've taken their data and we've combined it with our own data from Neville Street to make a larger and more accurate data set. Now, if we zoom into Newcastle, you can see that the number of sensors is actually quite phenomenal. In fact, this is one of the largest deployments of air quality sensors in the UK. And we can have a look at the average air quality metrics across this entire range of sensors. Now, looking at that, the temperature is 9 degrees, and that strikes me as a little bit odd because, of course, on Neville Street, the temperature was 13 degrees. We saw that a few minutes ago. And perhaps that's due to the effect of urban heating. But that isn't really the point here. The point here is that by visualising the data in this way, you're able to propose hypotheses, it's a little bit of a tongue twister, but you're able to propose hypotheses and perform analysis just like I have just done. And that's something that hasn't previously been possible. We can also have a look at the data of the heat map. So let's have a look, say, at the nitrous dioxide. Just bear with it a second when it loads. So looking at that, out in the suburbs we've got some blue dots, low levels of nitrous dioxide. And if we go back to the city centre, in the city centre we've got yellow, red, green, i.e. there's more nitrous dioxide, pollution levels are worse. Funny that the air quality in the city centre is worse than it is in the suburbs. Yes, that is obvious, but until we start to measure our air quality, we don't know what the effect of any improvements we make, any actions we take to try and improve the air quality are. So this is actually really important, even if it is telling us something that we probably already know. We can also have a look at the data historically. So we can actually go in and we can have a look at what the values have been throughout the day. That's not an effective pause, that's a pause while we wait for it to load. So we can actually have a look through the humidity. We can see the humidity hour by hour as it has been throughout the day. And we can do the same with the other metrics. So we can have a look at the carbon monoxide, for example. So if we have a look at that, again, you can see the values that have been throughout the day. Now, by looking at these trends, we can predict future trends. And that's been alluded to a couple of times already this evening. But what that means in real terms is that if we have an empty street bin on one street corner, it might fill up in 2 hours, and we're able to predict that. Whereas an empty street bin on another street corner might take 4 hours to fill up, because of course different bins fill up at different rates. This level of reporting has never been so instantaneously available or so publicly accessible before. And the thing is, we're not measuring anything new here. Air quality sensors have been around since before I was born. They've probably been around since before Khan was born. But having a network of air quality sensors connected to a citizen's dashboard allows the data to be leveraged in a way that has never previously been possible. And that's all possible via the Connexin City OS. Now, unfortunately, there's a smart traffic light down here that's just changed from yellow to red. And that means that I've run out of time. But hopefully I've given you a little bit of a taste of what a city, Newcastle, at the start of its journey to become a smart city looks like, and an idea of what a smart city could look like. Thank you very much.
Who would have thought the CTO would have all the jokes? So now this is an absolute pleasure of mine, because I'll be introducing a good friend, Arvind Satyam. He is not only the Managing Director for Smart Cities and Global Public Sector at Cisco, but he's also a World Economic Forum Young Digital Leader. Arvind has been working within Cisco and has driven many of the smart city deployments across the world. He's going to be talking to us about the global smart city positioning and why he has a special place for Hull in his heart. Arvind, thanks very much for coming. A pleasure. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm going to try that again. Good afternoon. That was a little bit for me. I flew in last night, so it's like morning time in California. But I will tell you, nothing has changed because I left San Francisco and it was clear and sunny. I'm in Hull and it's clear and sunny. And it's my second time, and it's been clear and sunny both times. So all this thing I've heard in London about it being rainy in Hull, it's not true, right? So that's one of the things I love about Hull. But the second one, I have Andy to thank for this, because Andy introduced me to chip spice. So Andy, when we think about the Andy zone or the Andy zone idea, nobody should tweet about this, but I'd like to take that to San Francisco. Maybe make it roadshow. So in all seriousness, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for Con and team. You've been great partners, and it was great to hear about the deployments in both Hull as well as Newcastle. So I've been involved in smart cities for almost 10 years, from the start of this journey when we were talking about IoT. And what's interesting is smart cities was really one of the first verticals of the segments where we started to see adoption of IoT technology. Now, we as a company are great at building networks, connecting things, collaboration, security. These are the things that we're good at. So you may ask, why is Cisco in the smart city business? Because for us, it wasn't about the technology. And we've heard from Jenny and Andy on this. It's what you can do to improve the quality of life of citizens. How do you make it easier for somebody like Margaret? How do you make it easier for Andy and Jenny and others to manage the services in a city? So that was a challenge that we took. And what that meant was that we had to understand the business of a city. We had to understand the ecosystem. We had to understand waste and lighting and those components. So I wanted to talk about what it means to orchestrate a smart city ecosystem and what have we learned over the last 10 years. The first thing I want to do is start with a fun question. So City of Barcelona is one of the cities that we work with, and we've done a lot in that city. So the question I have is, what was the annual increase in parking revenue in the City of Barcelona as a result of adopting smart parking technology? Is it A, 250,000, B, 2 million, 3, or C, 25 million, and D, 50 million? Now I'm going to have a show of hands for each, but before you answer, because you need to know what it's worth, I think we're going to have 1 month of free parking for all the people that win, right, Andy? Okay, I didn't check this with Andy, but we'll make the deal. So put your hands up if you think it's A. Okay, not interesting. B. Okay, C. Okay, I see a fair amount. D. It's great. So the answer is D. Sandy, that's a lot of people, so we're in trouble. Now, that's one of the things that's important to keep in mind, because this technology actually allows cities to generate net new revenue, but also save on costs and drive operational efficiencies. So when you think about how do you pay for this, that's one thing to keep in mind. We'll come back to that. Now, we've heard from 2 cities here. We've also heard from Furkan in terms of connecting things and really making cities programmable. As we've gone through this journey, we've realized that there is a lot of fragmentation in the industry. It's not about the technology. You know, we'd love to think mayors wake up in the morning and say, I'd love to buy a router. That would make my job and Stu's job a lot easier. But mayors seriously don't wake up in the morning and say, what router should I buy? They care about, what should I do in terms of improving the quality of life of citizens? What are the political priorities? How do I improve infrastructure? So there's that side of it. But cities are organized as verticals, as silos. Smart city technology and the smart city vision and the way you embrace this is at a horizontal level. You've actually got to have these agencies speaking to each other. You've got to collaborate, but also decision-making when it comes to buying into a common network or a common platform and sharing these data. You've got to make that decision across the board. So there's fragmentation in terms of the technology and the sensors and the applications, but there's also what we need to do in terms of the siloed decision making. So this is one of the key things that we've looked at. So our approach to this was to build a platform that really ties all these things together. And you saw in the Newcastle video, Stu, you did a great job of explaining why that's important. So for us, a smart city is not about deploying smart parking. It's about tying many of these things together so you can start doing predictive analytics. You can start looking at traffic and parking and the impact on environment. You can start looking at, if I improve waste collection, what does this mean in terms of traffic? Right, we've deployed in old European cities, and Hull happens to be one. We've deployed in cities like Granada, where when you have a truck that goes down the street, it actually blocks all the other traffic. So if you're able to reduce the routes, it not only reduces the cost of collection, but it improves traffic. It improves the quality of life of citizens. And you may have heard, 30 to 40% of downtown traffic is people looking for parking. And that, if you can improve that, that also drives economic development because you have more people coming in and actually spending quality time in the city as opposed to looking for parking. So our vision is to really tie all these things together and just go back. Well, this slide has to build. So, okay. So we talked about our platform approach. We've developed a Kinetic for Cities platform that really addresses this capability. And what it does at a horizontal level is to tie a bunch of sensors together. So there's N number of parking sensors. Around the world, there's going to be thousands and thousands, and we wanted to really give that choice to cities based on the local environment. Some might choose to do in-ground, some might choose to do curbside, some might choose to do video. We didn't want to be in the business of picking winners. What we wanted to do was make it easier for cities to choose which ones are out there. We also wanted to make it easier for that ecosystem of sensors to tie into this platform so that they can share their data and they can actually allow this data to be exposed upstream to application developers. And similarly, we've realized that there's application developers that are going to be local to a city. There's going to be innovation coming out of universities and local hackathons. And so we wanted to take an open approach to really foster a global, but also a local ecosystem. And then security is key. And so we wanted to make sure that we architect security through the solution. But as we've gone through this, you'll notice on the top, these are all these domains, waste and parking and traffic. This is not our heritage. We didn't grow up in lighting, we didn't grow up in waste. So it was important for us to understand that business and then understand who the key players are. This requires us forging new ecosystem partners. Now, some of these pictures look ridiculous, but that's by design. I remember 5 years ago attending the lighting fair in New York City. It's the largest trade fair for lighting. And I sat next to this gentleman, and he's like, well, where are you from and which company? And he thought I would be from a lighting manufacturer, and I said, Cisco. He said, oh, that's great, because I've seen your trucks. You guys cater to food, right? I really enjoyed the lunch. And I said, no, it's not SYSCO, it's CISCO. And trust me, you probably don't want to eat a router. But that just gives you an idea. We as a technology company, for us to be successful, we need to work with new players. And similarly, we're starting to see lighting providers, urban operators, wanting to understand how to digitize their business. So what we're seeing in this industry, and this isn't just in smart cities, it's in the whole IoT and digitization transition that's going on. You've got the industry players, the business side of it, wanting to understand how do they digitize and how do they improve their business through technology. So who are some of the key players? Now there's network providers and Connexin's done a great job of this, deploying Wi-Fi and LoRa, etc. locally. And there's lots of service providers that are in that business. And so they're traditional actors. We heard of Accenture and systems integrators that tie all these things together. There's also application developers, local as well as global. And there's going to be companies that add value on top of the data. Then you have sensor companies, and there's going to be thousands and thousands of sensors. And they're going to keep going down. And the lower the cost of sensors, the faster they're going to be adopted. And we're going to have 50 billion connected devices. We'll have 100 plus not too far down the track. But some of the other players that have been new for us are companies that are in the whole infrastructure management business. These are companies that do long-term contracts for lighting and waste management or parking, and they do concessions. We're a business that thinks about quarters and 1 year out or 2 years out. These are companies that are comfortable with 10, 15, 20, 25-year contracts. And so we need to think about how do we embrace those type of models? How do we partner with these type of players? And the last one, which we've taken very seriously, is as we've gone through this journey, one of the big impediments is funding and financing. So there's funding that typically you get through grants, which drives innovation, but there's financing that you can use to scale these capabilities. And so we kept looking at the industry and we're wondering, well, how do we get these projects from small-scale projects to getting scaled citywide? And how do we get many cities in the UK and many cities in the US adopting this? And often we hear from municipalities saying, we're not a big municipality, we don't have a lot of budget sitting around. So then we approach the financing community, infrastructure funds, private equity funds, and banks. We said, you know what? You've traditionally financed toll roads and bridges and hospitals, so traditional infrastructure. Why not finance parking and lighting and security and waste management? And so they've studied these deployments with us, and they're fully on board to help municipalities and our partners embrace these models. So we've created a $1 billion program, which we call the City Infrastructure Financing Acceleration Program. It's a mouthful. But the good news is we have a committed group of partners that want to come in and help municipalities as well as partners that sell these solutions scale these capabilities. So they look at a lighting network and they realize that 30 to 40% of the cost, municipal cost, for a city, the energy bill is lighting. But you can reduce from 60 to 70% as you move towards LED and smart lighting. So they look at that and say, you know what, I can take some of the savings to actually front end the investment into this. Similarly with parking, you can generate net new revenue. With waste, you can save money. And you've got different business models for each of these capabilities. So we're very excited about this. In addition to this, we also invest in companies that we think are doing disruptive business models in this space. So Connexin happened to be one of our first investments globally. And we're very proud of this. And we're also very proud of the innovation that we're seeing in Hull and the UK in general. So if you look at the ecosystem of players, there are many actors. I just wanted to share a little bit about how Cisco and Connexin makes this puzzle work. So we focus on the networking, the platform, the middleware, and exposing the data as well as the security side of it. There's going to be n number of sensor providers. We're not in that business. Connexin's not making sensors. What they're doing is they're actually doing the integration of the sensors, building the network, and tying these elements together. And there's a whole host of other partners, Quantella and others that come in and orchestrate this. So if I look at the metaphor of a symphony, when I think about a smart city, the ecosystem needs to come into unison for this to really start working together. And we need cities on board where they come and guide us as to what data do we need. And that way, we as an industry can calibrate this and build the right type of business models. So I'm going to close with some key elements of success. We've been working in this space over the last 10 years. We started in greenfield megacities in China and the Middle East. We've worked on large European cities. We've started to work on smaller cities globally. We're seeing a lot more activity in the US and other markets. So these are 5 key elements. The first one is top-down leadership. Cities that have a clear top-down mandate are able to move towards this direction faster. It isn't about the technology. A lot of the challenges to adopting smart city capability is about bringing agencies together, consolidating decision-making. It's about some of the procurement guidelines, the funding, and those elements. And cities that have a clear mandate and a clear agenda to drive this, but also, frankly, events drive this. So the exhibition in the north and the City of Culture, these are things that help cities move towards this transition. Cities like Rio and others. The City of Copenhagen, their mandate was to become the first carbon neutral city. And as a result of that, all the decision making, whether it be environment, whether it be pollution, whether it be energy spending through lighting, all of those have that agenda in mind. The second one is about global open standards. When we look at our platform, when we look at our ecosystem, we always looked at it as an open approach. Because no one company can be successful in creating this ecosystem and to bring the smart city dream to reality. The third one is around smart regulation. Regulation that's controlled in a good way is positive. We look at the solar industry. Solar has benefited a lot through regulation. It's driven the costs down, and now you're starting to see a lot of the new homes embrace solar. And I know with all the sunshine in Hull, solar is a no-brainer in this market, right? The next one is around public-private partnerships. This is about bringing industry as well as governments to actually come together and solve things. And I know PPPs have been challenging, but I think you're starting to see a lot more receptiveness from both industries, but also from governments to try and move towards these models. And governments are making it easier for industries to come and work in this. They're looking at their public procurement guidelines. They're hiring chief data officers. They're hiring chief information security officers. They're looking at this as a horizontal. Similarly, industry players, technology companies, companies like us, we've spent a lot of time trying to understand the business of a city. And I think bringing all these players with funding, et cetera, will allow us to move to more of these models. And the last one is around a new ecosystem. This is about bringing actors who may not have worked together in the past to come together and build this vision and to scale this. So that's what I had, and the closing message is there's never been a better time, and that's because I think the technology is real, it's longer science projects. We may not have Andy's vision of having Jetsons and TVs on the watches. I think we can do the TVs on the watch, but no flying cars just yet, at least not prime time. But I think we're very excited about this industry, and we're very excited about what we're seeing in Hull as well as with Connexin and team. So thank you. Great, so now it's my pleasure to invite a panel on stage. We've heard from city leaders, and we're also going to have a perspective from Emma from the healthcare. She's from the clinical commissioning group, as well as Gary, who's the CEO of Radar, and they're looking at the impact of digitization from an insurance perspective. So I'd like to invite the panel on stage to kind of look at how all this technology disruption is impacting their industry, and to have a lively discussion on this. Well, thank you everyone for joining me on stage. So I know we've already heard from the team on the left up here, but I wanted to start with the two members that we haven't heard from. Anna, do you want to share a little bit about your role and what your focus is, and then we can get started afterwards?
Yeah, okay, so I'm Emma Latimer, I'm the Chief Officer of NHS Hull Clinical Commissioning Group. So we're responsible for buying all healthcare in Hull, and I've got a particular focus really on population management health. And when we've heard a lot today about the information that the local authority gets, but for a health commissioner, a health buyer, it would be really interesting for me to understand a bit more about what I'm buying, why I'm buying it, and how it connects with the data that we've seen around air pollution, all the other things we've talked about. So from a health perspective, I don't think we've ever really implemented technology at scale. We're good at projects or pilots. We don't actually ever really introduce things at scale, and therefore we never really see the benefits. So being part of the smart city, I think, is really important to us in health. We spend about £1,700 a year on average on treatment costs for patients. We spend about £49 a year on prevention. We really need to start thinking about how we're going to have health and care that's sustainable in the future and to really change the focus on that. So I think being part of a smart city, understanding the data that's available to us, sharing it and helping us plan better services for the population has to be good for Hull.
Great, thank you. Gary, tell us a little bit about Radar and what your role there is.
Thank you. My name is Gary Gallen. I'm the founder and CEO of Radar based here in Hull. And we come at things involving technology from an unusual sector. Our profession and my particular training was in law, and we've worked with insurers, with businesses across sectors, across the world, dealing with things usually when things have gone wrong. And it's interesting hearing from one of the previous speakers, they're learning and bumping up against the law when looking at drone footage and a Section 50 notice and how to work at height. The thing that is the law is seen as far too complex, costly and difficult to access. So what we use technology for is actually to deploy the knowledge that we have and provide insight, information and education and empowerment solutions for business and for people. And that's how we're using smart city technology.
Got it. I can just imagine the insurance implications of a drone falling on a freeway and disrupting traffic, but that'll be for another time. So Emma, I want to start with you. If I think about the healthcare industry, in the developed world, it's an aging population. There's more demands on the healthcare infrastructure in general, right? So costs are going up, demands are going up. So how do you think about investments in technology in the context of all the demands that are placed on you?
As I said, we spend far too much on the treatment end, and we always talk about investment in prevention, but we don't. And I think that's because we don't have necessarily the data or the enough intelligence to really do that. So access to healthcare is important, but it's the wider determinants of health. So where people live, how they live, housing, whether the houses are warm, all those things contribute to somebody's health more than access to healthcare. So there's a big piece around that. But there's also work to do with our local authority. We talked about health and social care. Knowing where our patients are, knowing where that potential next COPD problem could be, and being able to adjust something, managing variation, reducing demand. There's lots of waste still in the system. So understanding that, knowing where to target resources, I think is paramount. So I don't think digital is separate from the total resource. I don't think it's about prioritising the right thing to do, the right solutions for patients, and I just don't think we've embraced technology enough, and certainly not at scale. So by working through the place board that Ian described earlier, it really is understanding what matters to our population and how we can use the public sector resource alongside business to really make a difference to our population that we haven't seen. And if we don't do that, I don't think our NHS or our health and care system will be sustainable. So we absolutely have to focus on it.
Got it. I like that. So it's not about technology as a separate thing. It's about technology as part of the business.
Part of the solution. And again, I think we've worked locally with an estates partner, and that's been instrumental because as an NHS manager, I don't know much about buildings. They do, and they've really invested in our estate. We've got a fantastic estate here. So again, it's about using expertise in different areas to sort of find find solutions to my wicked problems. So I think being part of this, understanding our population, knowing where to direct resources is key.
Right, thank you. Gary, if I look at the insurance sector, a lot of the traditional insurers are nervous, right, when they think about digital disruption. Case in point, I was speaking with a large insurer in the US, and they said, well, insuring cars, so insuring drivers today is a large part of our business. So what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years' time when you move towards autonomous vehicles? People have less cars. Do I insure the car? Do I insure the person? What if the car is shared across multiple people? But it just gives you a perspective as to what's going to happen as new technologies come in and the models change. I think the insurance sector is going to change. I know as you and I were chatting, you've done a lot in terms of leveraging data to enable the insurance sector. Love to get your perspectives on what you're seeing and how you're helping the industry transform.
Sure. The insurance sector is not unusual. Banking, financial sectors, the legal sector, accountancy sector are all medical professions, NHS, are all facing the challenge of transformation through digital. And for me, the tech has to have a purpose, and it's got to be about empowering and educating people so that they can lead a better life. So it's all about people. And so in terms of insurance, the way that we work, they would instruct us when things have gone wrong, to try and fix things, repair things, but usually reactively. If you're using your insurance, it's usually a sign something else has gone wrong with you, your business, your people, and things there's been a loss. So the data that the insurers have, and the data that we as litigators as a profession have, is usually only accessed after things have gone wrong. So what we're unlocking is that data, that insight and that intelligence. And for example, the beacons and the sensors, we deploy those with an artificial intelligence solution we've called Grace to actually talk to people in the workplace and give them insight and information in real time through a mobile device or through a device implanted in the wall or the table or the desk, but something to make things accessible and understandable in plain English that people can use in their daily lives very simply to avoid the pitfalls, to avoid the dangers. It's about saving lives, helping people perform better, work smarter, take stress out of the workplace. There's a lot of conversation about well-being these days. One of the things that we're trying to have a social impact with the release of the insight and the data and deploying it to people in real time and giving them the benefit of a learning solution. The more they use the solution, the better informed they become, the more intelligent the solution becomes, the better decisions that they can make, the more informed. Less harm, less claims, less costs. So it's a way of actually connecting insurers with the legal profession, with risk management, and real people in businesses to help them understand the right way to do things, the right order to do things, to avoid the pitfalls and the problems. So as I said, people working at height, they have the right equipment, they have the right method statements, they know what they're doing. With one insurer, for example, they had £750 million in losses in 2016 related to accidents in the workplace. Since our solution has been embedded and deployed to start working in the workplace, we've changed that loss ratio by 20%. And that's only a small deployment. So we're looking at, as I say, deploying that insight and let people know these are the consequences, but here's the smart learning to take for it. And it's about accessibility now through the technology is absolutely key. But create a conversation, make the information accessible.
Great, I like it. I think what I heard is premiums are going down. Is that it?
For our clients, yes.
Please enable as many insurers as you can. So I'm going to move on to Andy. Andy, I love the enthusiasm and thank you for your partnership on this. I will tell you, if the streets in San Francisco are as clean as Hull, I'll take it any day.
Thank you.
Right. So your team's doing a great job. So I want to go back to the smart city journey that Hull's gone on. You as well as Newcastle, I think, have done a great job of moving towards this, implementing this, creating a vision. From Hull's perspective, what was the real impetus that kickstarted it? Was it the city of culture? Was it about transformation? What enabled this journey and what's going to help it move forward?
There was a number of things actually. I think the first, city culture was the initial driver because that's when we first met Connexin in terms of when they put the Wi-Fi into the city centre. It was actually, I was introduced because I was looking to look at replacing my CCTV cameras at that time. And being a non-techie, it was right that just replace and go out to the market, get the latest digital one. And it was a colleague, a lady called Emma Warwick, who works in our East Infrastructure Board, who said, you need to go and see Furkan. So Furkan and I met up with Will, and they showed me this range of technologies that I never knew even existed. And then you start to talk to like-minded people in our own organisation, so people like Ian, people like the team from our IT team, who all get it, and they knew it. So we took that through what we call our CST, the directors. We invited them to understand what it is, the possibilities of what this could do for our residents, our visitors, and our businesses within the city. And that became the driver. So I quickly saw then for street scene lots and lots of potential. So not just, so yes, you talked about the verticals, but it's that horizontal for me, that all those correlations that you don't even know exist yet. That's the bit for me that's going to be where my value is going to be. And we've had great support from CST, from Emma sits at our CST director's table sometimes. And so that's the journey that we've been on. But it was really, for Cam saying, whatever you do, buy those CCTV cameras. So that was our driver.
Great. And in our experience, Andy, once we start enabling and providing this data to cities, it's amazing the correlations that come out, right? The first thing that we try and understand is just what data would you like? And then the cities start coming up with all kinds of correlations based on local requirements. So I think the future is going to be very exciting. Jenny, from the standpoint of Newcastle, so what really drove your journey through this? And
I guess it was a number of different opportunities coming together at the same time. So against this backdrop of austerity and the need to do things differently, and actually thinking about, do we really know what we mean when we talk about digital and smart city? And that alongside opportunities like the Great Exhibition of the North and trying to think about things differently. I guess there was already a lot going on in Newcastle, and probably one of the big journeys that we've been on is to try and bring all of those actors together. So hosting the National Innovation Centre for Data is a massive asset for the city. And actually some of the work that we've been trying to do is, right, how do we make sure that we make the most of the assets that we've got within the city for the benefit of our city, and it's not just going out into different areas and different organisations. There's also this slight sort of good fortune of Newcastle being referred to as a bit of a Goldilocks city. So it's not too big, it's not too small, it's just right. So from a deployment perspective, you've got a good sized population, you've got a good mixed demographic, you've got a range of different neighbourhoods, a range of different problems, but it's actually a relatively easy city to deploy in. I think with all of these factors sort of coming into line, that really sort of spurred us on, but absolutely the Great Exhibition of the North and the opportunity around the Smart Street project really crystallised our thinking, and we want to do this, we want to get this done, let's stop messing around with little piecemeal projects, we want to do something that's a bit more fundamental, and I guess that's where we are now. How we think about how we scale that up is the next step.
Great. And I think one of the other things we've observed is it's easier to get things done in cities the size of a Newcastle or a Hull, as opposed to a New York City, right? By the time you figure out all the decision makers in large cities, that's going to take a couple of months, at least, right? But I loved your close when you were talking about the data and the power of what you can do by tying all these things together, but also driving the local innovation ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue over to John. You spoke about innovation locally from Hull's standpoint. So when you think about the ecosystem, universities are a key part of the ecosystem, right? They drive a lot of innovation. They're often looking further out than businesses themselves because they've got the ability to innovate through that. So what are your perspectives on innovation in this space, and specifically some of the things that Hull University is doing?
Well, I think University of Hull set out its mission in this region to be a civic university, and we see ourselves at the heart of what's going on in this region from the point of view of making our research accessible to the people that are in this region and in this city, so that we can help them to drive innovation from the research and the funding that we have to push the boundaries in essence. But it's larger than that. So we actually want to, as part of our own commercialisation mission, to start to build digital businesses, to build digital propositions that we can start to share with the region, to also help build the digital skills and capabilities that we're going to need within the region to take this agenda forward. And thirdly, we have some fantastic high-value assets within the university, like our supercomputer. So we need to open our doors, and we need to make those accessible to people who want to do analytics, who want to process vast amounts of data. We're also creating a data centre that will be available for the region to take space in and to take services from. So we see ourselves as a pivot point, if you like, in terms of driving innovation. but also creating skills, capabilities, and facilities that the region can use to drive this agenda forward.
Great. I know we have 20 minutes for this panel, and I want to be respectful because cocktail hours after this, so that's a very important part of the program. I think we have time for a couple of questions. Any questions from the audience? I need my glasses to see it. Okay. Can we get a microphone?
Gary Westcott from Fascinating Tech Magazine. First of all, thank you for this. It's been amazing, very informative, truly inspiring, and most of all, the innovations just make total sense to me. You said that a fragmented approach doesn't make sense, and you talked about breaking down the silos in cities. One of my concerns is on the macro level. I spoke to someone a few weeks ago who was producing a smart bin indicator. Basically, the idea was it would tell people what day the bin had to go out and what colour bin they had to go out. And his frustration was that no two cities put their bin information in the same way. There was no common API. It was really difficult to find common information between cities. So I guess my question is, what do we do to stop our very smart cities becoming isolated silos of information?
I think it's a great question. So I'll quickly start and I'll let Andy add on. I think it's going to be difficult to drive standardization at that level, right? Cities are going to have different characteristics. If you look at a city like Provence or Edinburgh, they're going to have a very different environment, physical environment, to a city like Dallas, right? So they're going to have different requirements, different bin types, whatever the infrastructure is. I think that the level where we can drive more standardization is at the sensor and the data level, so that you're not going to have 15 different standards for that. So over time, you're going to start seeing more consolidation. So you might have different form factors, but you actually start having more consolidation as to which access technologies they tie into and how data gets normalized, how quickly you take it, and how it gets exposed. Andy, your perspective?
Yeah, it's part of the difficulty comes from the outlets for waste, and those are each local authority, or we have a combined joint waste strategy with East Riding. And we go out to procure, so it's who's in the market for material, waste, recycling materials for bins. That makes it very difficult. I think if I was encouraged, there is a government paper coming out, and we're expecting, it was last week, I think it's a couple of weeks delayed, about what their vision is for waste collection across the country. We need local authorities to look at that. But I think my answer would be, come and talk to local authorities, because I think the problems are probably similar, but there will be variations. And I absolutely understand that. As somebody who works in Hull and lives in East Riding, I get confused with which bin I'm putting out sometimes, and get a penalty notice sometimes as well for the sake of it. But I think a lot of the problems are common, and it's just how that could be varied within the app, etc. But I'd love to talk to them.
Great. Next question. We have a question towards the end of that.
Hi, I'm Dileepa Ranawaka from the Centre for Digital Innovation. So my question's for Jenny. I was really captivated by the kind of progress you're making in Newcastle. And I realise you represent the council. But one thing that kind of stood out to me was the huge investment in sensor networks and the attitude of opening that out for other people to kind of third parties to access that. If I understood that correctly, that's from the university. I'd really like to understand what the driver of that was, you know, why you did it, and what you look to gain from that. I think it's a great thing to do, so yeah.
So yeah, the majority of the sensor deployment in the city has been driven by the Urban Observatory at Newcastle University, which is a funded programme. and it is the largest network of urban centres in the UK. I guess the driver for them is that the more information we can put out to the city, not only does it drive academic research, so there's a big sort of academic emphasis there, but there is that business growth side of it as well. And certainly Newcastle University has long had a view of itself as a civic university, as a university that gives something back to the city. It isn't just about students and academia, but it is something that the city can benefit more broadly from. I think we've actually, as a council, got a bit to learn around the data sets that we have. I don't think we aren't as open as we should be, but certainly we need to sort of follow on the lead of people like the Urban Observatory to say, actually, there's nothing to fear with putting the information out. Actually, something that's really critical from our perspective is we do actually have political support to do that. So councils or political organisations, and some of the data that goes out you wouldn't necessarily want to share. But actually, let's just share it, because in the age of things like freedom of information requests, people can request that data anyway. It'd actually be better if we're just open and transparent. We say, this is the data, this is where we are now. Things like air quality, sometimes it isn't necessarily as good a story as you would want to say, but it's a starting point, and it's an open commitment to saying, we understand the data, we understand the position that we're in now, and this is what we're going to do to make things better.
Right?
That's great, thank you.
Thank you very much. So please, let's thank our wonderful panel. Really appreciate the insights. Furkan, back to you.
Firstly, thank you very much. I'll take that from you. Great for an amazing talk and for flying out to come and see the UK City of Culture. Thank you all guys for sharing your insights and your views. Arvin's going to be with us for probably another 8 hours until you jet off again. I think you've been in China, San Francisco, where else? Dubai, and now in Hull.
Right, but the best weather's here.
Brilliant, great.
Thank you. Cheers.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. I think, for me, this is such a special occasion to bring everyone to Hull to talk about a technology that is world leading, that we are driving in the north of England with cities like Newcastle and Hull. So, I want to finish by just kind of thanking everyone here, because without you guys coming, things like this don't happen. I want to thank my team, especially Max, Christina and Nick, who've put in a lot of long hours to kind of make this happen in Hull. And I want to leave you guys with a special video that we have had specially commissioned for what we've done in Hull and what we plan on doing in Hull and what the city in the future could look like. So with that, thank you very much everyone. Thank you for coming tonight, and I hope you enjoy this video.
Cities are messy. You knew that coming in. But just think, if you could unjam the traffic, speed it all up. If parking spaces could announce, hey, I'm free. If streetlights reduced your energy use, saved you money and were easier to maintain. If the quality of air around us could be monitored and managed in real time, making it cleaner and safer to breathe. Why not give people internet access regardless of where they are? And while you're at it, create a more inclusive society. Too much to ask? Not at all. It's what's happening right now in cities like yours. They are getting connected, going digital, improving the life for the people and businesses there. And who's making all of this happen? People just like you. Sure, it's the future, but it's already here.